Now, for somebody that's worked on, you said 40 hours of stuff, 500, I think you said 500 tracks. Like,
yeah, 500 or 600 there.
In your experience, you've seen a lot of music. You've worked on a lot of music. Some that had, was very, very elevated at the top of the charts kind of stuff, and stuff that wasn't. I'm curious, in your perspective, what's something that makes a hit?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's something that goes back to like the 20s and the 30s. Like, who knows? It's definitely related to the environment in the world at a specific time. Like, that's why music goes through trends. And you have the jazz, and then bebop, and then big band, and then all that stuff. It's like I think it's different for every era. And it's definitely evolves based on the culture and the taste of the people. Like, there's stuff like, you can't really define it. It's and there's just all these happy accidents that happen, but then, there's a mixture of like the happy accident, and then the people like Prince who come along and just like everything they do is just like, oh my God, how can one human being do all that? So it's I don't really know. I really don't know what that is. It's never been a big concern of mine, though. I've always wanted to make music that was compelling, interesting, and took you on a journey. If it ended up being a hit, which it occasionally has, that really hasn't been my forte. It hasn't been my focus. Because it's, to me, as soon as you're trying to imitate something,
that's a great point.
By the time you figure it out and get good enough at it to do it, it's in a hairspray commercial. So then you've already missed the boat. So you really have to follow your own path. And a lot of the music I've made, even 15 years ago, it doesn't sound like anything else. So like, I feel like what I do has a long shelf life because I kind of don't pay attention to trends. I kind of, sure, if an artist wants to go that direction, and you'll hear that influence, but I don't think it's not a decision. It's just,
that is the perfect segue into the next question that was going to piggyback off of that. What do you think makes lasting music? Because there's music that's a massive hit today, or 10 years ago, whatever the case, massive hits, but then they're only there for 8 months, a year. But then there are songs, even relatively, like, you want to go back as far as, like the, Frank Sinatra's and stuff, or the Beatles, but like, even today, like, one of my favorite bands is The Fray. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but like, they came out with their like massive hit albums like 15 years ago, and it's still like How to Save a Life, or Over My Head, or Coldplay's Fix You. Like, these songs have been 15, 20 years, and they're still on the radio.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it has to do with the song itself. It doesn't really have anything to do with the production value.
Okay.
I think it has, a lot of it has to do with the way it connects with people, from a lyrical sense, from a melodic sense, and then there's nostalgia, because when there's like, say when grunge came in, and all of a sudden there was Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden. It's like all of a sudden, Cinderella and all that other stuff was just kind of overnight like erased. See, so these trends create these eras, and I really don't know what's going to be next. I feel like it's time for something different. I feel like a lot of the, when I first heard auto-tune, I was working on a record with Sean Mullins. He had that hit Lullaby. I worked with Peter Collins on that first record, and then the second record I produced with Sean. And I remember Peter brought in Cher's Do You Believe? And it was before it was on the radio. He somehow had a copy of it, and he said, this vocal effect, it's incredible. We've got to implement it. I think it's going to change pop music. And like, we heard it, and we're like, really? Really? And then we had to figure out what it was, and it was a rack mount unit called a Nataris, which was a rack mount one space vocal tune, basically. And if you messed with the parameters and made things happen too fast, and like on chromatic or whatever, it would do those goofy effects. And so he wanted it on this track, and the track was Sean Mullins' Shimmer. It occurs 2 or 3 times very subtly, because we're like, no way. so then Auto-Tune the News came out a few years later, like on YouTube. Auto-Tune the News. I don't know if you remember it, but it was it's probably still on there if you Google it. It's called Auto-Tune the News, and basically they turn the news into pop songs.
Yes, I've seen videos like that. Sure, absolutely.
And now you jump ahead another 10 years. And that's in pop music and totally acceptable. Yeah. So it's been a very long evolution, And I do miss like the character of people singing, and the imperfections. I mean, I like autotune and I use it and stuff. And for an effect, it can be really cool. But I think if you use it in a musical way and create, like somehow capture some humanity in the performance, some emotion, some frailty, things like that are really hard to get through that filter, because, you know, it's like if you listen to, like, you know, a Peter Gabriel song or you know what I'm talking about. It's like there's something, it filters out a lot of the humanity in it, you know. So I'd like to see more. I mean, I'd like to see more of a trend towards more human vocals.